What are the best markets to invest in 2023 for short-term rentals? We have Kenny Bedwell here on the Fearless Investor podcast to show us exactly which ones he's looking into. Hey, welcome into the Fearless Investor podcast, where we're helping you to conquer the world of short-term rentals. I'm Kyle Stanley, and I am really excited about this conversation with Kenny Bedwell that we had here in January about SCR Insights and also about the best performing properties and best performing markets here coming up in 2023. You know, I'm a big believer in data. I'm a big believer in knowing your numbers before you go into a deal. It doesn't matter if you own or arbitrage or co-host. You need to know what those numbers are going to look like. And for the longest time, AirDNA has been the only tool out there that I truly believe in. And by the way, I'm still using AirDNA. I'm going to use both AirDNA and Kenny's STR Insights because you can never have enough data. So I'm going to recommend that you have both of these because Kenny's going to show you today how he's using his STR Insights, not just to identify, is this a deal or not, but what markets to even go into. And that's one thing that I love about this tool that you're going to see from Kenny is that if you are just either whether you're brand new or if you're looking to move into another market, you can start to figure out what is that next market that I should be in without having to guess. You can look at the data and you can also learn a few things from this podcast that we did with Kenny. So without further ado, let's get to it right now with Kenny Bedwell here on the Fearless Investor podcast. Hey guys, welcome in. We've got the man, the myth, the legend of STR Insights, Kenny Bedwell. Kenny, you've become a good friend of mine. Excited to have you on here and excited to really dive into SCR Insights, especially just with everyone that listens in. They keep on asking like, hey, SCR Insights, do you know much about it? And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to bring Kenny on to talk about it. So today we're really excited to have you on to talk about STR Insights, but also to talk about like what are the top markets for 2023 and also maybe what are some trends that you're seeing to start looking for in some top performing markets. So Kenny, man, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. That was I appreciate the intro there, the man, the myth, the legend. I haven't been brought in like that before, so thank you so much.
Not even Bill Faith, man. He talks you up all the time.
Not even Bill Faith. He's
That's
like my good friend Kenny. That's what he says. So
nice.
So thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to share any insights and yeah, answer really any questions and dive into this because I mean it is the number one the question when we all get started in short-term rental investing is where do I look? What's the best place to invest in that's going to fit my personal criteria? So I hope to answer that for a lot of folks listening.
Yeah, well, I know you will today, man. And before we get started, though, you have some short-term rentals yourself. So what's that craziest story or biggest learning lesson that you've had along the way here?
Yeah, so I you know what? I have two and I'm debating on which one to share. And you know, there's always a learning lesson with each, but I'll let you decide. So the two stories, I'll give you the topics and then you can choose which one sounds juicier. Okay, so the first one is being sued. The second one is missing a same day turnover. So I'll keep it vague like that. Like,
being sued for sure. We've all missed a same day turnover. That's the history. Yeah, no. Give me the 45-second overview. What happened with the
45-second overview? Okay, so my properties are in Buffalo, New York. I have 6 properties in the area, well, throughout New York. But in this particular property, we have a lot of guests come stay downtown for weddings, and it's October, fall season. There's a lot of weddings in the area, and this happened a year ago. A guest 3 days after their stay messaged me saying that they're going to the hospital, that they had a slip and fall. They fell off the balcony of our property, and they're like, we hope our guest is okay, but we're not sure. And I'm like freaking out. And that's all I got. I start messaging them, trying to call them, and nothing. I don't hear anything. And so long story short, they broke their collarbone and they didn't go to the hospital until the day after. I'm pretty sure alcohol was involved. And they ended up suing us. And so suing us for, negligence or whatever, that the balcony rails were, too small or something. They didn't win. And thankfully we have good insurance. They probably settled. I don't know. But the lesson here, the takeaway here
Yeah.
is so that property that I have, so I don't actually own that property. It's a partnership with somebody else who owns the property and I run the rentals. It's similar to like co-hosting, or it's more of like a
Right.
rental arbitrage where it's in my name. The owner of that property, that my business partner, did not have insurance that covered for short-term rentals. So
Oh,
yeah, so they went after him first, and he panicked and he came to me and he said, Kenny, like, I don't, my insurance won't cover this. And I didn't know. And then I got served or whatever. The guy comes and does all that. And I have insurance. I have proper insurance. And they
oh
were
man.
and this isn't a proper commercial, but
Yeah.
I called them right away and they're like, look, if they come after you, we got you. Don't worry about it. You're taken care of. We know.
Yeah.
And it was scary, but and I had to deal with some phone calls later on with, some attorneys and stuff. But long story short, it worked out. It was actually a lot smoother than I had expected,
Good.
and it just disappeared. And because I had the right insurance, and so the takeaway there is get the right insurance. And yeah, that guy is so lucky. He could have lost his house
Oh my
if we
gosh.
didn't have the right insurance.
Yeah, well, shoot, big learning lesson there. And especially every time we onboard a new co-hosting client, one of the first things we tell them is update your insurance, short-term rentals, add us as an additionally insured. And this Tawny, proper insurance is what we just had someone ask, what's the right insurance? You just said it, proper insurance. That's not a term. We're not saying get the proper insurance. No, that the name of the company is
That's proper.
proper.insure.
Yes.
And no, that's not a commercial for it. Another good one that we recommend is Safely. Safely has been a really good partner of ours as well. So, well, Kenny,
You
thank you
you
for
would be
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
you'd
ahead.
be surprised too. I want to throw this out there for everyone
Yeah.
listening. You would be surprised on how many hosts think they're covered by their insurance.
Mm,
And if you're thinking right now, oh, I've already done this. I have special insurance. You need to go look at the exclusions. You will be surprised by the exclusions. I was at a boot camp recently with a bunch of hosts who thought they already had insurance, and we found that like a third of them did not cover their short-term rental, and they
wow.
thought they had short-term rental experience already. So, I had an attorney with me, Jeff Hampton, STR Law Guys. He was just reading through it and he's like, nope, nope, you're not covered here, you're not covered there. And it's just, you would be surprised. So, everyone listening, take a moment today or tomorrow and check through your exclusions on your insurance policies. So,
There you
anyway,
go. A lesson that we
back to
didn't
the
expect to get into
presentation.
today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
Uh,
Kenny, really excited to have you in here. And of course, we're going
Thanks.
live in our six-figure formula here on January 4th. Some of you might be listening to the replay. For those of you that are listening and saying, well, wait, hey, how do I get into the six-figure formula and see this live? One of the benefits is also that Kenny's going to stay in here after our podcast is done and answer questions from our students. So as we're even going live here, students are posting questions right now, and we're going to answer those after this is done. So go over to fearlesskyle.com/6FF, and you can get started here in the six-figure formula. So Kenny, let's jump into it, man. I mean, you and I got connected. I think the first time we met was over at the Wealth Summit, STR Wealth Summit, or conference. And at that point, you were just you were frantically launching STR Insights,
That's a great way to
just
put it. It's
yeah,
accurate way to put it.
just to
Yeah.
appease Mike and
Yeah.
Bill and make sure that thing was good to go. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I want to start is what is STR Insights and what's the evolution of that been in what's been live now for about 7-8 months?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, publicly since July, we did that soft launch in June. Thank goodness it was a soft launch and not for the public. It was a lot of learning lessons there. Yeah, so I guess let me back up a little bit and share my personal story with you because it really starts with that.
Mm,
So as I mentioned, I'm an STR investor as well. I've been investing since 2018 and I now have 6 properties. In 2020, I really ran into this issue of all my properties are in Buffalo. I need to diversify. I want to look elsewhere. Where can I find other opportunities that work for me? And the typical places I'd go to look for those answers is, social media, type in, hey, what are the top markets to invest in? Or, you read articles and things. And the problem I found was people would say, and I'm going to pick on some markets here, and they're not necessarily bad markets to invest in. It's just the common markets we see. People would say, the Gulf Coast, the Smoky Mountains. If you're on the West Coast, you might see Scottsdale, some of these other big time markets, maybe Coachella, like Joshua Tree even. And what I was finding is that one, I couldn't afford to be in those markets. And then two, when I'm actually diving in and looking at the data, I weren't seeing the returns that people were claiming they were getting. And what I realized is that those people bought before the hype.
Yeah.
So they're capitalizing on what everybody is, like jumping in on, and they got a lot lower housing prices. And this is when housing prices are starting to really tick up. And so I'm like, there's got to be a way to take revenue of a market and compare it with the housing prices of short-term rentals in markets across the country. So I start reaching out to data providers, almost every single one. I start paying hundreds, thousands even of dollars to get reports and answers, and nobody could answer that. Nobody could say, look, here are the best markets to invest in, not simply of revenue, but prices. And so anyway, I started, so I'm like, you know what, let me see if I can figure this out on my own. I worked at Citibank as a research analyst. We work with big data, we analyze Fortune 500 companies, and I knew how to get this data or what to look for. And so I went out and was able to get, basically it started with spreadsheets, and I was able to break through and figure out, okay, these markets, this is the average price of the home, and this is the average, what I would call the ROI, a gross ROI. Basically take the revenue of the market divided by the purchase price or value of properties in that market, or the median listing price essentially, and that would give you a gross ROI. So which markets have the high gross ROI that fit my budget? That's the key.
Okay.
And so anyway, I did that in my spreadsheets, and I found a market.
Pause just 1 second. So you were taking the gross revenue. So if I gross $200,000 at a property for the year, and you spent, call it 500,000, you divide the 200,000 into the 500,000, 40% ROI. That's how you're getting the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Got it.
So across all the markets across the country, and then which ones fit what I'm looking for in terms of my budget and even ROI preference as well.
Cool. Okay.
And region or destination type. So I did that, and I found a market near me in Watkins Glen, New York. I then looked for properties for sale in that market, and I found a property listed for it was $370 at the time, but I got it for $350. So I bought it for $350. That property will gross $110,000 in year one.
Nice.
And so finding the property became extremely easier because I knew the right market to invest in. And once I was able to do that, I took that to some of my other investors, friends, that I'm in groups with. And I was like, guys, is this valuable to you? Do you need to know this information? And they're like, yes, you need to turn this into a tool. You need to do something with it. And I had no intentions of turning these spreadsheets of what STR Insights is into what it is today. Until my friends were telling me, you need to do this. We need this information to get us more like up to speed on where we should be looking outside of the markets we just know. So what I did. And that's the story of how STR Insights got started.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said something that I think is really applicable to the entire industry right now. And that is a lot of people jumped in after the hype. And what do they hear about? They hear about the Scottsdales, the Smokies. One that comes to mind for me is Palm Springs. That one's just been hit hard. And I mean, there's a popular video going around with Shelby Church and talking about how she, bought one in Palm Springs and it's been losing money. And when you look at an area like that, the saturation, I actually did the research. There's 20,000 homes in Palm Springs. 5,000 of them are short-term rentals. Like literally 25% of these homes in one area are short-term rentals, which is crazy. So, a lot of people, I think, like you said, they heard about the hype, but like, what'd you say? It's Watkins Glen? Is that what you said the name of it was? I can guarantee you like 95% of people on this listening to this right now are like, what's Watkins Glens? But
Yeah.
here you are, doing what you said, right around, what is that, like a 33 to 35% ROI there in year one on a property. So how is it that you located that area? What made you want to look at a smaller place that many people don't know about?
So, it's all based on personal preferences.
Hmm.
And when people come up to me and say, Kenny, what are the best markets to invest in? I'm like, whoa, that's a loaded question
Right.
because there's so many different factors that go involved in terms of where you would prefer to invest in and what fits your comfort level. Is this a lifestyle investment? Are you purely trying to grow your portfolio? Are you just wanting the cash flow? Do you want the tax savings? If I wanted the tax savings, I would not continue to invest in New York. That's the
Yeah.
last place I should be looking. But that's not where I am or where I was at that time. I needed to grow my portfolio. I'm looking for cash on cash returns. But cash on cash isn't the only answer. We need to look at cash flow. We need to look at tax savings and appreciation. And every market has their strengths and weaknesses. And so for me, I was looking for markets that had a really high cash on cash return and had major 2 to 3 major traffic drivers. So Watkins Glen, New York, in the Northeast, there's a NASCAR stadium there.
Okay.
It sits on a lake, and there's a state park that has over 1 million people that go to it every year. So
Nice.
there are
Okay.
3 major traffic drivers on top of wineries and a bunch of other stuff that go compression events that go on in that particular market. And they have a regulation on the number of short-term rentals. So they put a cap on the number of short-term rentals for that particular market at 80. So there's all this demand, but there's only so much supply. So I was able to get into that market, and this is maybe a conversation we can have after this because there's so much I can dive in with working regulations for
Yeah.
you in terms of markets that have them. But I was able to get into that market and get a property in the right location. And so I bought a 7 bedroom, 7 bath for
Oh,
350.
I like that.
And it sits on a hill, it overlooks the lake. It's like right in the town. It's a great location. And there is only 2 other properties that can host the same guest count as I can in that
Nice.
entire market. I have more bathrooms. So my property is always first. So, and that's really what we should be looking for. I know we're not really talking about 2023 yet, but diving into 2023, we really should be targeting these like niche opportunities in these markets across the country. It doesn't have to be a Watkins Glen, but there's Watkins Glens everywhere. We just have to find them and they have to fit our preferences.
I like it. I know, I'm in a city that you've always been a big fan of too, Oakhurst, Bass Lake,
Yes.
in California. And um, that to me, like, I'm even thinking about it from a attraction standpoint, like you said. And it's like, okay, it's right next to Yosemite. It's got a lake. So those are 2 major traffic drivers. Um, Outside of that, like there's not a whole lot going on. So I think a lot of people, if they were trying to think of, bigger areas like Scottsdale and Palm Springs and all this kind of stuff, then they get lost in the fact that like, hey, this is a small town. Why would anyone want to come visit here year round? But that's not like that's to me the thing that people have to understand too about short-term rentals. It's not about consistency. It's about what is your end of the year income going to look like? Because in a place, I don't know, maybe you can attest to this in your Watkins Glen or any of your properties. In a place like Bass Lake, I know that I'm going to make all my money, like 70% of my money from May to Labor Day. And then the rest of it is just kind of like, okay, I'll be happy if I'm even covering the mortgage the rest of the year.
Right. Yeah, same here. Yeah, we shut down. I mean, we got a couple of bookings in November, but yeah, May to the end of October is that's pretty much booked out. I mean, the ADR is right now is the average daily rate is at least during the summertime, I want to say 4 times what it is right
Yeah.
now if you
Yeah.
booked my place. That's
Wow.
I'm making the same money as properties that are like on the beach in Destin in the summertime in those months, just because there's just so much demand.
Mm-hmm.
And so much going on. But then in the wintertime, it's completely dead. I'm making like nothing. So I have to wait till May. But you got to, and that's something too, you got to know that. And if that's okay with you, then you can target markets like that, in the Northeast or, Midwest or wherever it snows essentially. And there's no skiing nearby. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about, these niche areas and these, I've heard you call them up and coming areas as well. How are we identifying those?
That's a really good that's a good question. So well, one, I mean, that's why we made STR Insights, to make it
Yes.
easier. But I think there's a couple different strategies that we got to think about too in finding
Okay.
them. So the biggest one that I've seen, and you've touched on it, is the saturation factor.
Hmm.
So for example, Oakhurst. I've only been there once, so I can't really speak to it, but I do know some things about it. But they're not building new complexes there, right?
No, there's not new construction going on
Yeah.
over there. Yeah.
Right. And so there's only so many houses, there's limited supply. And so really we need to be finding markets like that where there's kind of like this natural barrier in terms of the number of properties there that are doing, the that are making money and being short-term rentals. You have to find that because saturation, people are just entering, flooding into the market. I mean, there's been this Airbnb boom the past like 2 years,
Hmm.
and everybody and their mom is interested in this, and everybody and their mom should not be in this because they don't want to do hospitality.
Hmm.
But they don't understand that, and they're just buying properties
Right.
anywhere in markets. So we need to find the right we need to find markets that kind of have that, like I call it being on an island. So limited by the supply is limited. You can't just keep growing and growing to infinity. We're getting markets like Blue Ridge, Broken Bow, parts of Branson, like these big markets that we've heard of, even the Smokies. They are People are losing money now when they go to buy, because one, the prices they're too high, and then two, the increase in the saturation has just doubled over the
Yep.
last 2 years. So I mean, we have to find markets that are on what I call an island, so limited supply. So that's kind of the first step I would look at, if regardless of STR Insights, regardless of any tools or platforms out there, is identifying markets that have that quote unquote are on an island.
Okay, cool. And you and I didn't talk about this, but I would like to give you the opportunity to share your screen and show a little bit about STR Insights and how we even do that. Like what you just talked about right now is, can I go on there and just start identifying a potential island or niche place, and
Yeah.
how would I do that? But while you kind of get that started there, I guess one of the things for me that I'm always teaching, and this is based on AirDNA, which I've been using for years, and I know STR Insights is a big competitor of it. But one of the things I've always said is like, hey, look for the place that has the established data. And what you're kind of sharing is like, hey, some of these places that are up and coming may not have established data, and you might have to go more off of what's in the area versus what is the actual hard data of already existing short-term rentals in that area. Or is it a mixture?
It is a mixture, and frankly, I never tell anyone like this is the best market, because it's
Right.
biased. It's inherently biased. You could be the number one thing that short-term real estate investors discount when they're looking for properties is location.
Mm.
We hear location, 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 but then when they find a market they want to invest in, they just start looking for properties for sale. When in reality is you need to find the micro markets within. Where in that market should I be located? Where are the top properties and why are they performing the way they're doing? In that Nashville conference, I don't know if you remember this, it's fine. But stuff like, I just popped in my brain, but I showed an example of this, of a market. So LJ is in the North Georgia mountains. And if you look at the top properties there, they're actually located on water and not on top of the mountains. You
Mm.
think mountain market, you want views, and people will pay for views. That is correct for the most part. But in LJ, people want to be on the water. There's all these streams and creeks and rivers, and all of the top properties are on the water. And you're like, okay, why is that? There's like trout fishing and a bunch of other stuff, and the water is pretty there or something. I don't know, but that's just the case for that market, and those properties make more. Now, if you look at the housing prices, The housing market doesn't follow that. Because people think that the houses on top of the mountains are worth a lot more, so they
Mm,
price them higher than the
yeah.
properties on the water. So the properties on the water are a better deal. They have a better ROI. And so you got to study the markets first. And it could be markets, if you're not comfortable being in, going back to what you were kind of saying, if you're not comfortable being in a market like a Watkins Glen that no one's ever heard of, except people in the Northeast, or some of these smaller areas, maybe in the Midwest or Michigan, that's fine. But you got to find the micro market within the big time established markets that you're looking for. And there lies the best deals or the best opportunities. So
I like that micro market term. I guess just another term for that to me would be what is the avatar property that performs best in that market, right?
yes.
Yeah.
I'll go back to when you and I kind of talked, and I gave you a demo of SCR Insights a while ago. And we were talking about Fresno, and the market average, the prices. You were like, well, I can find homes cheaper here than
Mhm.
what your tool is saying, and it's like you're absolutely right, but it's because you know that market and you
Right.
know that avatar, what you just said, and you have to study the markets first and find that avatar before you go and purchase a property. Everybody's used to doing it this other way around, where you take an address, you go plug it into a free calculator online, you get an idea that what that property makes, and then you look at comps and you try to figure out everything, and then you look at the regulation and all these other factors. But you just spend a lot of time wasting, because if it's not a good deal, you don't know that. But if you find the right avatar, you already know when a property
Mhm.
is for sale if it's a good deal by just kind of looking at, oh, I already know what I should be looking for. And then boom, there's a property for sale in that area. What's its price? Oh, that's higher. Oh, that's maybe in our sweet spot. I need to dive in deeper.
Yeah.
That's how we need to be approaching, analyzing, and finding markets and properties in the coming year. So
Well, and just to your point, you know, one of the areas that we're in, we've mentioned a couple times now, Bass Lake. It's just crazy to me how a house literally half a mile away from another can have the same dimensions, the same look on the outside, and it's completely different in terms of the performance. And what we really realized in that area is if it doesn't have a lake view, it's getting hurt. If it doesn't have a hot tub, it's getting hurt. If it doesn't have a boat slip, it's missing out on a lot of income. And we can literally, like, we have one property that is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It fits 10. And we have another one that's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, and it fits 10. So not a whole lot of difference, but one has a lake view and a boat slip. The other one doesn't. And we're talking double the income. Like,
wow.
that's a major difference. Double the
Yeah,
income is
double the income.
nothing to scoff at. I mean, so I and me personally, Kenny, and maybe this is a discussion we can have really quick before we show SCR Insights. Like,
Sure.
do you've said the word saturation a couple times. Do you buy into saturation in the industry?
It depends on the market, but yeah, it
Yeah.
really depends on. I mean, if you look at, for example, Houston, Texas saw a 40% increase in the number of short-term rentals in
Yeah.
2022 alone.
Yeah.
That is saturation.
Mhm.
Whereas, markets in the majority of markets in California maybe saw a 10 to 20% increase because of the regulations keeping that supply down. So some markets, yes, saw saturation. Other markets really just saw growth, is what I'd call it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that I look at this is if you're playing in everyone else's league, then you're buying into saturation. Like you're
yeah,
gonna have to deal with saturation. But if you're buying a 7-bed, 7-bath in a small market on an island, right? Like
right.
I don't care if there's 10,000 short-term rentals in Watkins Glen. There's maybe one other that has 7-bed, 7-bath. Like you're just not playing in that person's league at that point. And
Right.
that's how I think you overcome saturation in this market. We just, I just sent a text message to all of our owners this morning that we're co-hosting for, that could fit a hot tub in their property, and said, listen, here's the proof of concept. We've been doing a hot tub at one of our properties for the last 2 months. This is going to set you apart. And how many properties have hot tubs in Fresno? Under 15. So now I'm not playing in that. The other 985 in Fresno, they're playing in their own league. I'm playing in a league of just 15 people, right? Like
Sure.
that to me is how we take this idea of saturation for 2023 and beyond and come out on top.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if you, so I think that is a great strategy for with your current properties. You know, taking current properties. I will add though to that, the number one thing, if you're looking to purchase a new one, that you can just get on a different league from your competition is the location.
Yeah.
If you're in the
100%.
right location, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
You have the best spot
Mhm.
for whatever that it's proximity to the beach or the mountain, the lake views, like you said, like that location is the key for looking. You want to be in the right spot. And that's honestly the first thing I'd be looking for. But if you have a property right now, I love what you say is looking for the things that can make me different or look better than everybody else, you know, not following the herd but being different.
Yeah.
I think that is key, and we have to constantly do that anyway, you know what I mean? Like that's part of this business is you don't just leave it, you know, the same. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's why I'm also excited for 2023, because I just think so many people that are playing in that league of 90% other people, I think 50% of them are going to exit the market and turn their places into long-term rentals because they just are like, this doesn't make sense anymore. So, which means
Yep.
even more demand and less supply for the rest of us that stick it through. So
Right.
I'm excited for that. Let's get you to share your screen. I want people to see what SCR Insights looks like. If you're listening on the podcast right now, I encourage you to go over to the YouTube channel so you can see this. For those of you that are watching live right now in the Facebook group on Six Figure Formula, I did post the link to SCR Insights. If you want to get started, go ahead and use that link. If those of you that are listening on the podcast or watching a YouTube video, it's in the show notes. So go ahead and check it out. But Kenny, we got the screen shared now. How would I use SCR Insights if I'm a first-time user here?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm showing you is our current dashboard. And basically what we're showing is the top markets in the country based on what we call a gross ROI. This isn't a net ROI. We're not talking about expenses. We're just talking about gross average revenue divided by essentially what it would cost to purchase a short-term rental in that market. That's a key word, short-term rental, not a residential home.
Okay.
So this is really key in beach markets or markets where there's a big difference between a property that in value of vacation rentals versus non-vacation rentals. So, you know, certain markets, obviously vacation rentals are going to be priced a lot higher or valued a lot higher. And that's why we call it a valuation. So what we're looking at is the sorting of an ROI. Now, there's these up top here are the filters. There's no criteria in here except a market size. In our tool, we have about 11,000 different markets, but most of them, 80% of them are small, meaning they have less than 100 active listings, and they don't fall into our terms of medium and large. So medium means they have more than 100, large means they have more than 500 active listings in those markets.
Okay.
Which this is a preference. These filters are your preference. This is where you put in the information you want to know or that fit your criteria. So for example, you know, we have destination types. So if you're an investor and you want to find what is the top beach market to invest in, you can click top beach market. And then you can go in and say, okay, I'm interested in investing in the West Coast, or I'm interested in investing in the Northeast or a particular state or the South or Florida or whatever it is. And we can actually go in and sort. So I'm just going to pick Florida because that's pretty common. And to kind of continue this on, we can say, what are the top beach markets in Florida, or what are the top beach markets in Florida between Destin and say Gulf Shores in Florida, but we'll do Daytona, for example. You can put in particular markets, but the point of the tool is you have access to the entire country. There's no restrictions. You don't have to come in and tell us what market you want to invest in or the information on. We're helping you identify what markets fit your criteria first. We also have the information about regulation for most of the medium and large markets across the country. And then obviously budget is a key one. And then you just hit search and it loads and boom, here, Melbourne Beach is the top beach market in Florida based on the criteria that you inputted in. So, and this is based on the ROI of 13%. So there are obviously markets that are doing a lot better than Melbourne Beach, but that didn't fit the criteria of the person. And that's what we're trying to do, is identify, okay, sweet, Melbourne Beach is a great market. And then we can dive in deeper in a second, but I'll let you go ahead and ask any questions.
No,
you
yeah, that
have
was
about
my
it.
next question is, okay, I decided on Melbourne. So how can I now start looking at some of the more specific, deeper dive type of numbers in
Sure.
Melbourne?
Right. So the next thing is you really want to dive into, there's really two things. You want to dive into the bedroom count. So what bedroom count fits my budget? And then where in Melbourne should I invest? So if we look
Mhm.
into Melbourne, I can click into there. And so it looks like it's not even necessarily the front beach area, but the town next to it, which makes sense, in terms of affordability. So what we have here up at the top is the revenue percentile slider. So
Okay.
I can see, and it impacts this map here. These are all the active short-term rental listings in Melbourne Beach. And we have their bed and bath count, the revenue, occupancy, ADR, and then the link you can click into them to see the properties. So what I would do first, and this is how I use the tool, and this is how I used it for myself, is I would identify what we talked about, the micro markets. So where in Melbourne Beach should I be targeting? So right now I'm looking at the 75th percentile. Obviously, if I open it up to the 50th, I see more properties. But what I want to do is I want to identify, I want to go all the way to the 90th or 95th, depending on how many
Yeah,
properties there are.
absolutely.
And now I know that, hey, being around the airport, the properties around the airport make the most money. They might not necessarily be priced the same. We can look at that in a second, but the properties around the airport make the most money. And then this little strip right here. So I've never been here, so I can't tell you if this is the downtown or what the deal is. Maybe it's a nicer neighborhood, but knowing that this entire market is this whole area right here. Okay. But now we know that I need to either be near the airport or I need to be in this little neighborhood right there.
Mhm.
And I can go in Zillow or Realtor, or wherever your MLS site you want to use, and circle those areas and look for properties in those areas. And you have the revenue metrics here. You can scroll down and you can see, oh, sweet. Based on this percentile, the 90th percentile, or the properties in these areas, this is the average revenue for that percentile in those areas. And so you can see how much revenue they're making. So you can
Right.
quickly identify, if you find a property for sale in that area, you can then compare it to these numbers here to help you know if it's a good deal or
I want to
not.
know
This
what in the world that sixth one is doing at 602,000
seriously, yeah,
revenue.
let's say it could be a let's
A
see,
large
where
property,
is it?
yeah.
A large, yeah, some large, it's on its own. I don't know where it is. Okay, I'll have to look for it. But so I mean, like there's tons of opportunity in terms
Yeah,
of like looking for unique bedroom counts that aren't really popular
right.
versus like the twos and threes. There could be a ton of them. We see that a lot, like for example, like Orlando or Kissimmee. There are a ton of twos and three bedrooms, and the sweet spot or the best deal in the opportunity is actually the 8 or 9 bedrooms.
Mm,
It's like a bigger count. So if you're going to Kissimmee, and you can really only afford a 2 or 3 bedroom, you're not going to maximize your ROI. It's the
right.
higher bedroom counts there, and you might need to look in other markets. And you can do that here. Go back to the dashboard. So there's really a lot of, and then you can export the properties you see on the map. That's pretty new, and you can see if they're new properties or if they've been out for a year. And you can see their revenue and just kind of put it into your own pro forma as you build that out.
Yeah.
Um,
I
we also, just to throw this out here,
yeah.
before we could dive any deeper, we also have regulation amount and a little detail. So what that means is we have a category. This is a generic category for right now, meaning that there is some sort of restrictions there. And you'll notice a lot of the top markets across the country are either moderate or heavy, meaning that they've got some rules and you got to go figure out what those rules are. In the future, we will provide links for the details of that, but we have at least, hey, look, they have some heavier restrictions, and you can filter that out when you do your dashboard search. You can say, you know what? I don't want to see markets that are heavy. I want to see markets that are moderate or little to none, and
Mhm.
then search based on that. And there you go. You have these that are a little more friendlier to short-term
Right.
rentals than the other markets. So
Right.
I'll go back to this, but anyway,
Cool.
go ahead.
Well, guys, like I said, I dropped the link right here in the Facebook group for those of you that are watching on the replay. We've got it in the show notes. You're going to see, let's just be real, right? You're going to see some similarities to AirDNA. You're going to see some dissimilarities to AirDNA. AirDNA has been the most popular for a long time. I know Bill Faith, keeps on calling STR Insights the AirDNA killer, right?
He does, and I'm like, stop. So,
Where,
like there's a sniper out my window right now. I'm looking
yeah,
over my
exactly.
shoulder all the time. Yeah, but yeah.
What I'm going to say though is you guys make your own educated decision on if you're using AirDNA right now and you're like, hey, SCR Insights has something that AirDNA doesn't have, and you want to go use that, get started. Just go ahead and click on the link, try it out. Worst thing that can happen is that you get some information and you end up saying, you know what, I like AirDNA better, or vice versa. Maybe you jump in and you say, you know what, this is more comprehensive than anything that I've seen, and you start loving this tool. So I just encourage you to go get started with it. Click on the link in the show notes and you can go ahead and get started. Kenny, is there any other way that you'd like people to connect with you?
Sure. I'll add this.
Yeah.
You guys, especially if you're purchasing a property, you're going to spend, anywhere from 500 to $1 million, maybe $1 million+ dollars. This is a big investment. Personally, when I bought my property in Watkins Glen, I used 4 different data sources on top of my own. So I'm not telling you we're better. We do offer different features and we do offer things, but I would strongly encourage you, just investor to investor, use different data sources to verify the numbers that you're seeing. Just in case, because it can vary widely depending on the market. So do that to back it up, because it is such a massive investment that you're risking. And you're only going to be spending a couple $100s to verify, what you're about to do. So don't be afraid to, I'm not telling you to use us and not everybody else. Do use other people too. Verify the information. That is key to making any investment. I will say too, guys, you can schedule, we do one-on-ones, and the people you do one-on-ones on our team, they all own short-term rentals. So you're speaking to people who understand the business, and they'll show you how to use the tool, and they'll even help you find your markets. Because like I said, my top markets are different from your top markets. And so, yeah, that's really it. So
and they can do that on the link that I provided.
Which link did you provide?
The one that
just
you got.
Yeah.
Cool.
They can do that. Yeah, through there. Yeah, okay. They can sign up. So
perfect. Awesome. How about social media? Anywhere else that people can follow you?
I just go to, I think we're just at STR Insights on Facebook and Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel. So I've been interviewing a lot of different realtors across the country, diving into their markets, kind of throwing the data at them to make sure they verify it, to say, hey, this is what we're seeing. Is this accurate? Or what are you seeing versus what we're actually seeing in the data? And that's been fun. So you can check us out there and really, to dive in and see, learn about new markets across the country.
Awesome. Kenny, thank you so much for joining us today on the Fearless Investor Podcast. Great. And helping our audience to conquer the world of short-term rentals. You're the man. And hey, right after this podcast, Kenny and I actually just went ahead and said, you know what, we're adding you to the 6-figure formula. So they are now a discount partner with us in the 6-figure formula. So whether you want to go and get started with STR Insights right now with that link that I mentioned a few times here in the show notes, or if you want to get a great discount to STR Insights, you can go to fearlesskyle.com/6FF to get that started. That's going to do it today for the Fearless Investor Podcast. We're helping you to conquer the world of Airbnb and short-term rentals. We'll see you next time.